Hi, everyone. My name is Stacie DeArmas with Nielsen, and welcome to another episode of Nielsen Power Chat, focusing on Latino audiences and sports. Today, I am super excited to be with one of my friends in the industry, but also a leading voice, Pedro Guerrero, CEO of Guerrero Media and co-founder of Latinos in Sports. Hi, Pedro. How are you?
Hi, Stacie. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I'm excited today because it is Hispanic Heritage Month, and we're talking about one of the hottest narratives around the industry. Everyone seems to be talking about Latinos and sports, and the recent report that just came out from Latinos in Sports. Nielsen also released a companion report. There's a lot of narrative this month and just in general about the rise of the value of Latinos as sports fans, as audiences. And I want to take a few minutes to touch base with you, no pun intended, on the narrative. So welcome to our Power Chat. So quickly, tell me a little bit about Latinos in Sport. I know it is a newer organization. Tell me what you're focused on and about some of your amazing co-founders.
Awesome. Well, I'm happy to be here. And for us, it's Latino Heritage Month, 12 months out of the year. But whenever everyone's coming together to celebrate our impact, it's even that much more richer. And I think our impact is very much felt in the sports industry more than ever. And I think that's why you're seeing so many different people really think about and talk about sports as an industry that is obviously growing rapidly, and how Latinos are very much part of that growth and impacting that growth. And so Latinos in Sports was conceived through editorial. At the end of the day, Hispanic Executive, which we publish, took the time to elevate Latino leaders working in the business of sports. And one of those leaders is my good friend and co-founder of LIS, Javier Gutierrez, the former CEO of the Arizona Coyotes. We came together this year to establish Latinos in Sports, which is a platform that is here to help advance Latinos in the business of sports, connect them to each other, but also through the report that we work together with Nielsen, educate the general market about the true power of Latinos in sports and how they are very much so driving fandom, driving the growth in sports and leagues and viewership. And so at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do with LIS. We are the big convener, the platform to connect both non-Latinos and Latinos alike in the mission of advancing the awareness and the connectivity between Latino leadership and the sports business.
So I love that. And for folks that are watching, the name of this report that we're gonna talk about two different pieces of work, but the first one is the Latinos in Sport piece of work, which is titled Game Changer, The Power of Latino Fandom. I love this piece of work, and Nielsen, by the way, was honored that you selected us to work with you on developing these narratives, because it really ladders up to the power of Latino fanship, fandom, and the opportunity that is presented for brands and advertisers, and honestly, leagues and teams and media companies too. There are 5 major takeaways in the report, but the one I really want to focus on is digital first. And so for folks that want to know the other takeaways, take a look at the report. It's right there on page 4. There are 5 major takeaways. We're going to talk for a second about digital first, because we know Latino fans are really engaged across multiple platforms, but there's this really strong preference for consuming sports content online. In the report, we go over the fact that Latinos are consuming a lot of sports content on TikTok and just in social in general, and what we call sports adjacent content. Can you speak for a minute about how you see the connectivity of Latinos and the availability of so much sports content or sports related content digitally really being a prime opportunity for brands, media companies, and sports outlets?
Yeah, well, there's so much in that insight. And I think we heard it best last week at our event that we had at the US Open when Rita Farrow was sharing, she's the head of Disney advertising, how companies are leveraging these platforms to connect with viewers directly. And so, like you said, Latinos are very much consuming their sports engagement through social media first, through their screen versus the TV. And so there's an opportunity to really connect with them one-to-one, right? Where previously companies were using social media to drive audiences to the TV or elsewhere, they're now meeting them on those platforms. One of the things that came out of the study was that fandom leads to revenue. And the fact that Latino fans are consuming their sports over digital media first, right? How can brands think about engaging with Latinos on those platforms themselves? So I think there's a convergence, if you will, of the ways Latinos are consuming sports, the ways brands can talk to Latinos, right? Latinos are connected to their teams through culture versus through language, right? So that's something else that came out of this study. So they're English dominant, they're consuming digital, consuming sports media digitally, and that fandom leads to revenue. So I think brands have a really interesting opportunity to think creatively about how they're connecting to Latinos using these digital platforms, speaking to them in English, but with that cultural awareness, and really driving towards that passion that's going to lead to eventually ROI with respect to the brands and goods and services they're trying to sell with respect to sponsoring their favorite sports clubs.
You mentioned just now that your report also highlights more digitally connected. So we wanted to really quantify what that meant in terms of streaming, like how Latinos are watching, consuming sports, and just in general, the relationship with streaming. Our report shows that about 50% of time with television is spent with streaming. So we took a close look at something like NCAA women's in general, women's sports in general have really experienced overall this incredible surge of attention, not just from Latinos, from all audiences. But it was really great to see, for example, the NCAA Women's Championship final skyrocketing by 354% between 21 and 24 for Latinos. So Latinos really leaning in hard to women's sports. Well, this isn't something that we just saw with MLB or something that we saw maybe with NFL, but we really saw it across the sports spectrum. I think we also in your report talk a little bit about WNBA seeing equally a huge increase among Latino sports viewers. So in the other thing we sort of explore in the companion piece is overall how not only viewership has increased by Latinos to what we would consider maybe United States sports culture sports, but also how Latinos have brought along with them this broad U.S. audience to what were previously considered niche, maybe, Latino viewed sports like Copa America, like UEFA, Champions League. So really great to see this narrative rounded out by the power of sports for Latinos, the power of brands, the power that brands have to tap into this audience. And then, of course, laddering it up with all of the numbers around the audience.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think what you were alluding to very precisely is that, with the WNBA, Latinos are 8% more fans than the general population. And I think that's another data point that shows the idea that a rising tide lifts all boats. And I think the fact that Latinos are very much consuming women's sports, it's only going to bring others into that wave, if you will.
And I think that part of that is underscored by the youth of the audience. So you also explored that, and I'm giving away another one of those takeaways. So we still want to drive everyone to take a look at that report, is that Latino sports fans are 72% of Latino sports fans are millennial or Gen Z versus 50% for, the total market. And so when you have younger sports fans, one of the narratives or the topics that have been really important for younger fans is investing in and celebrating female athletes, right? We see that that's a long tradition already for Latinos, but the Latino passion for consuming and investing their time and energy and eyeballs for women's sports, we think is influencing the overall rise, which is why I mentioned that, 354% increase among Latino audiences toward women's NCAA. Now, everyone watched more women's NCAA. That's not a secret, but Latinos leaned in so hard, it's really visible in the numbers. Last question for you I want to ask is the NFL just kicked off. There's been a lot of narrative around the NFL. I want to take us back for a second, though, to football. We talked for a second about Copa. We talked for a minute about UEFA. Curious, what do you think the future is going to be for these two, as I mentioned, previously considered sort of niche Latino community sports, the future of these sports and fandom in general in United States sports culture, and who's driving it? That's an easy one. That's a softball, if you will.
Well, Latinos are clearly driving it. I think if there's one message from the report is that Latinos are driving sports fandom, period. And I think the passion behind soccer is only going to have a waterfall effect on other sports leagues and teams, and we're seeing that now. And so I think the benefit of the World Cup coming is only going to, I should say, the fact that the World Cup is coming is only going to benefit the other sports teams. And I think Latino fans are more passionate. Soccer is no secret, right? That like they love soccer, but that passion translates to the other sports teams and the other leagues. And I think of my own experience as a young consumer. Football is the type of sport that just drives passion. It's 16 games. It's a short season, and you care rabidly about your team. And so it's almost like a perfect petri dish, if you will, of the impact of the Latino consumer. And so I think we're going to see impact on the NFL, on the WNBA that we were talking about earlier, on the NBA itself, and of course the MLS. I think that's no secret that the World Cup coming is going to help the MLS, is going to help women's soccer. And so I think all of these leagues are going to really benefit from the presence of the World Cup being in our country, in our hemisphere, I should say.
I totally agree with that. And one stat I want to leave everyone with, both in the Nielsen report and in the LIS report, Latino sports fans are 39% more likely than the general population to recommend a company that sponsors an event or sport they follow. So this is really a remarkable number. It says something about Latino fans, that they want to engage with brands that they feel share that same passion for a sport or a game. Thank you so much for your time, Pedro. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for investing and putting together this amazing piece of work that's accessible to anyone who wants to learn more about the opportunity. Folks, we'll link both of those reports in this video. And thanks so much. Have a great day, everyone.